if I could give one piece of unsolicited advice would be that know your audience, know your crowd, know how it is that you're going to help to educate in that space. And you can be strong and loud and vocal and all those things. But if it doesn't resonate with people, your message will never be more than that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denisa Tova, and today's guest is someone who has shaped policy, empowered women, built community, and somehow still found time to sing in 7 languages. The Honorable Leela Sharon Aheer story isn't just about politics or business. It's about resilience, creativity, motherhood, reinvention, and boy, what an energy. I cannot wait to get to know her. From her work proclaiming Canada's first Women's Entrepreneurship Day, wow, that's very profound, to fighting for laws that protect women and girls from gender-based violence. Leela is proof that leadership can be bold, personal, and deeply human. Leela, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Denisa. It's a real privilege to be here with you, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm overwhelmed.
No, likewise. We've never met. We briefly corresponded, and I'm instantly drawn to your energy. And I love people who do, and who are doers. They're not just talkers. So let's start from my favorite place at the beginning. Tell me a story.
Well, it's interesting, Alberta, Canada, which is where I live, is this beautiful. You can kind of see this gorgeous blue sky behind me. There's a amazing romance about this place where agriculture, where oil and gas, where so many things that are drivers of our economy, and also the way that communities are built. You know how it is in farming communities, and just like in large cities, there's a vibe and a feel and an energy that is the driver of who you become and who you are as a person. And growing up in these beautiful fields in with blue skies and really salt of the earth people had a huge impact on my community interactions and who I am, and especially being a woman of, well, and it's so funny I say this with sort of tongue in cheek now because I never knew I was a woman of color until I was elected. I didn't realize that that was important, or, just, any sort of importance at all. I was this little Indian girl. I'm half Southeast Asian and half whatever. My mom was Irish, English, Scottish, and all the Caucasian things. And so I grew up in this community of farmers with very few people of other ethnic origins outside of, we had lots of Italians and Polish and German, Dutch, all of these folks that I grew up with, and learning their languages and their culture, and then us pulling them into ours as well too. And there was just this natural, beautiful acceptance of who you are. And if you worked hard and you put your best in Alberta and Canada, we have this mentality of get her done. That's really who we are at our core. And if you had that mentality, whether I babysat everybody, Denisa, like I knew everybody's kids. I
Wow.
was a very, very young entrepreneur. So I babysat, I cleaned out horse stalls, I picked rocks from fields. I was just in everybody's business all the time, and I volunteered with my mom at the local community hall. So all of those things, you have this amazing group of people that are watching over you all the time, whether you want them to or not. And it's quite astonishing to see the level of support and love in a community like that, and how that really perpetuates your future and your activism. And when I was, I think, 14 and a half or 15, there was a new mall that was built near us, which is a big deal for a country girl, to drive into town and go to the mall. And I'd already at that point, when I was 14, I had learned about human trafficking. And in our culture, we have some fairly serious issues around child marriage and honor beatings and honor killings. And I'd been to my father's country of origin, India, many, many times, and had a lot of discussions with our family members around these particular issues. So, I mean, at a very young age, we were having some pretty serious conversations. And I was at this mall opening, and there was this big group of people gathered around, and I'm like, oh, was it a protest? Like, what? I was trying to figure out what it was. And I walked over there and this guy came up to me and he goes, well, who are you? And I, back in the day gave my name, did the whole thing. There's no emails or anything then. So, where I lived, my address, all of the things. And he said, well, what's your background? And I said, well, what do you mean? I'm Canadian. Like, what do you mean? He goes, no, you're like cultural background. And I said, well, my dad's from India and my mom is like, she's Canadian. And he goes, well, you're an abomination. And I looked at him and at 15 and a half, I was like, pardon me, like, what, what do you mean? And I said to him, like in my big 15 and a half-year-old voice, prove it. Like, what do you mean by that? And he said that I had contaminated the white Christian bloodline. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever experienced anything remotely close to that. And so I had already given out my mailing address, so they sent me all of this paraphernalia on how I had contributed to the demise of this, that, and the other. And I was showing my dad, and I hadn't even realized. I had only realized very recently that my dad was of color because you grow up with a person, right? You don't know
Right.
that, and so that had already become as quite a shock to me that my dad was a person of color, that even was a thing.
Yeah.
And then to have this, and so I went to my principal at my high school and I said, look, at this is going on in Caroline, Alberta, where it's a group of people that they're called the Aryan Nations and they're akin to the KKK, right? And so I did a full report actually on it for my school and for my high school on this issue. And it was what the beautiful part of it was is nobody knew what it was. They had, everybody has their unconscious biases and blah blah blah, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But it was so genuinely sweet and um innocent, those things. And it started my life at that moment to where I was going to need to be and how what the expectations of I believe that the world had for me, whatever you believe in, whatever your higher power is, those kinds of things, it became very evident to me at that point in time that I was going to need to have a voice in whatever it was that I was able to accomplish. And through many, many blessings and a lot of luck and hard work, I've ended up at some pretty incredible tables. And here with you now, who you yourself who are accomplishing great things, like it's really astonishing for me to be able to do this, and I'm very, very overwhelmed and honored.
Oh my gosh, I'm filled with so many emotions as you're a wonderful storyteller and you're just sort of I was drawn in that place. And first, the whole depicting of community, the closeness, where everybody, the oneness, there was no difference in color. And I'm with you on that. As you see human being as a human being, and then just being sort of slapped with this harsh sort of this outlook on life, just this one dimensional and very much manipulated outlook on life. I can't I'm just getting filled with anger, and I have to breathe because look, I'm a I'm a I'm a mom of a biracial African American son who passed away unfortunately a few years ago. And so, stuff like that
Oh,
makes
hun.
me very infuriates
Yeah,
me. And I have a beautiful Latina daughter, and so we're all people basically.
yeah.
And so I was just so going back, even more so, what stands out for you as a young girl? What were the kind of messages that you heard from your parents? What were the kind of values that were being instilled in you?
The values were hard work. It was always about hard work. It was always about there was no free anything. You were not given anything and you had to earn it. And that's why I babysat my whole life. That's why I worked so hard to be on the farms and to earn my keep, because it was one of those things where you feel so, so unbelievably fortunate to have a job and to have, money to pay for things. Like my parents were not wealthy people by any stretch, but they were wealthy with they had overcome so much because my dad is very chocolate colored skin and my mom's Caucasian. So you can imagine back in the day what that must have looked like for them to get married in a northern country like Alberta. You know, my dad had come from India with, you know, armed with his education and all of the things that were important to him. You know, he came and became an engineer for oil and gas in this province and made some incredible changes here, you know, like really was a stalwart of the energy industry in Alberta. And so I grew up with those roughnecks, you know, with those guys out in the field, and they would make me hot chocolate and keep their drafting pencils for me because they knew I collected those little pencils. So I had bags and bags of drafting pencils, and I was kind of like, I was so interested in what was going on because I got to spend time with my dad, you know? And so I don't know, those things were just so unbelievably powerful to learn that work ethic so early on. And then when it comes to being activated on any particular issue, you know what goes into that. You're doing it for a bigger purpose than the dollars, right? You know, the the work that came after. My eldest or my youngest son who's 27. He's autistic, and so back in the day when those things were just being diagnosed and you just saw kind of the tip of the iceberg of what was happening in advocacy for that, there was so much to learn, and advocating for him brought out another piece of strength and meeting beautiful people that were just doing the work, you know, and creating spaces for these beautiful kids. I mean, my sons are both amazing young men, and oh my God, Denise, I'm so unbelievably sorry for your loss. I just can't imagine. Those kinds of things just haunt me every single day, thinking about what a parent must go through, and it just makes me hug my babies just that much tighter. And I'm sending you so much love for your tremendous loss. You'll have to educate me more about that someday when we have more of a chance to talk. But we have to be here for each other. We have to, regardless of your ideological lines. I sit in sort of conservative circles, right? That's where I've always been elected, but I'm not your typical ideological politician. I fall into the realm of good policy is what matters to me. And it was always something that I could leverage, you know, throughout my lifetime. And, you know, politics has just become so toxic, and it's, you have to follow this person or that person. There's no room to move at all. You can't suddenly like have, you know, I have friends in every single political party you can imagine. And the reason for that is because you need to work across political lines in order to create good policy. And you have to be willing to hear people's pain points, regardless of, you know this, you work with lawyers, you're hearing and talking with people all the time that you probably viscerally disagree with. But it's more than that. It's about hearing their pain points and finding out how we serve them and how we help, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it's got to boil down to. So all of that from my childhood, I think really defined for me where I was going to end up in the grand scheme of how you help. And all of the things that I've been blessed to be able to do came down to asking, "Well, how can I help you? What can I do for you? What is it that you need? What can I listen? Can I help?" All of that. And it turns into things. You can turn it into policy, you can turn it into legislation, you can advocate, you can work on behalf of important things. But the first question needs to always be, how can I help you?
And even before you got into politics, you've called yourself a music teacher and you taught in 7 languages?
Yeah. Yeah, I can actually sing in 18 languages. I only actually speak 2 fluently, English and French.
That's
And I
incredible.
can get myself into trouble into some Indian languages because my family speaks a couple different languages. So enough to get myself into trouble for sure. But the power of teaching a language is that, especially in music, is that you teach emotion through different languages, and you can reach people in a very different way. And even I found through my election cycles, people wanted to teach me their music and their songs. I could sing. I ended up for much as I ended up, you know, uh, speaking to them because they preferred the opportunity to be able to sing, because you can tell people all the time how wonderful they are, but if you can sing in their language, especially to the elders of a community, it really touches in a different way, and there's a different trust that's built. And I still do it all the time. In fact, I was singing at a Filipino festival this weekend in Tagalog, and then I have 2 more Chinese events. I can sing in Cantonese and Mandarin, which is always hilarious to see the reaction of this little brown girl getting up and singing in those languages. And then we have a function this weekend. It's a fundraiser for some of the things that we're involved in that my sons and I are singing at. So
Okay, I think you're the type of person that is you're fearless, and so I can put you on a spot. Would you care to sing something in one of the languages?
sure.
I'd love to hear
Do
it.
you do you want something just in English, just off the cuff?
In one of the languages that you speak, not English.
Okay, I will sing for you in, let me think off the top. I'll sing in Tagalog, which is the Filipino language.
Okay.
Um, okay, let me see here. I'm gonna just find my words for you so that that it's actually in good language here. So the song, what it means is that it's talking about um, it's talking about the Filipino language, there's words called dahil sayo, and dahil sayo is basically um, it means because of you, and sorry, I'm just looking for here, just so I get the words right. And because of you can be related to people, but it also is related to God. And so in this song, this is a song that was originally done by Pelita Corrales, and and there is this amazing there's an amazing version that Harry Belafonte did as well, and it's just beautiful. And okay, let me see here if I can do this. All right. Okay, this is just the opening. Okay.
Yes.
Sa buhay ko labis, ang hirap papasakit ng pusong unibig, mandiwala ng langit, at nang lumingaya, hinanggo mo sa dusa, taging ikaw sinta, aking pag-asa. Then it goes, dahil sa'yo, nais kang mabuhay. Dahil sa'yo, hanggang mamatay. And then the song goes on and on.
Incredible. Incredible. Thank you. Wow. I have goosebumps.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anytime. I sing for you anytime.
Okay. Okay. There's a moment. So, okay. So you went from being a teacher. So how did you get into politics?
Well, that politics really found me.
Hmm.
I would love to be able to say that I was the purveyor of that, but in all honesty, it became uh, it was critical. You know, I was working a lot. I was volunteering in my community and a music teacher, right? And you look at the opportunities like within the community to be able to give back and do all of those things and be really really relevant. And I think they found that because I'd volunteered so much, I would be a good candidate for this, right? And the 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 work was really beautiful for me because you're involved in the public. And they had asked me like 100 times to run, and I was like, no, like I want to do this. And then I realized how critical it was going to be, not only to have a woman at the table. Like I said, I hadn't really thought about it from a gendered colored woman perspective at all, but because the world was shifting so much at that time, and to be able to resonate with the community, they knew who I was. I'd been really really involved. And like I said, I said no so many times, and I only won my first election by 260 votes. That's how much I had to hustle. I had to work my butt off. Second election, I won by more, and then I eventually got kicked out by my own party because my in my conservative space, I'm too progressive for the conservatives that were sort of taking over the party that I had helped build. I was the deputy leader. I was very high in the leadership roles, and it just became obvious that my style of conservatism, my centrist, center-right personality was just not going to mesh well with the party of the time, which is the one that's in power now. And that's fine. You know, everybody, I try to give as much grace as I can because those, you know, it's difficult and you're not
Yeah.
always going to be the right person at the right time for the right job. And right, you just got to know that your time is come and gone. Whether or not I'd run again is hard to say at this point in time. But I loved I love the public service. I love the puzzle of helping people and trying to figure out how the system worked and how best I could serve.
And you made a history by proclaiming Canada's first Women's Entrepreneurship Day. That's tell me
Yeah.
about that.
So my friend Milena Radakovich, she's this rock star girl who runs this operation in called We Do, which is Women's Entrepreneurial Day organization. And so I was minister with them. What part of my portfolio was status of women at the time. And we were doing a lot of work in domestic violence and sexual assault and work with the organizations and around human trafficking in particular. And we were writing this legislation at that time. And Milena had contacted me. I didn't know her that well, but I knew like what a rock star she was. And she asked me to do this declaration. And you wouldn't believe how much bureaucracy we had to go through to get that thing done because people thought, oh, well, you're pandering and you're doing this and you're doing that and all these other things. And I thought, you know what? You got to demand sometimes, right? And I'm like, we're
Yes.
52% of the population.
Yeah.
Women are the largest small business advocates right now, putting in risk capital and all these things. There's no angel at that time. There was very little angel investment and, you know, venture capitalism going into women's organizations and women's groups at that time. And I was like, no way. I said, we're doing this. And we fought really hard to get that declaration. And then we had it proclaimed in perpetuity. And
Wow.
then they started doing it right across the country.
That is incredible. And how would you explain that? What is the focus of that day?
The focus is of that day, November 19th, is to remind ourselves of the power of the woman entrepreneur and that there are ways and methodologies for us. Like we really succeeded during COVID where other companies didn't because we knew how to use the system and you see the opportunity in the crisis of the situation of how to nurture people through a crisis. And women are naturally really good at that, but we also collaborated really well. And I think that's something we don't do enough. In fact, I think sometimes we've got our high heels too embedded in each other's throats to see what's going on. We have to elevate each other, regardless of our ideological preferences or whatever. We've just got to be each other's cheerleaders. And at least, like I said, the premier of this province, I ran against her for leadership. And I don't agree with many of her perspectives from an ideological perspective, but as a woman leader, I love the fact that she's there. I love that she's representing. I don't need to agree with her, but I do need to support the fact that she is in a role that is perpetually held by men at a large degree. And it's not men's fault. This is not me pointing fingers at men. This is us having to come to the table to put ourselves forward and make these things happen. So good on her. I give her grace. I don't particularly agree with a lot of stuff that she says and does, but there's a lot of grace in the fact that she is fighting a lot of ways in upstream battle for who she is and what she's trying to accomplish. So kudos to her. And the other thing is that it sets a precedent for what's possible. We are
Yeah.
going to be the biggest taxpayer and the biggest contributor to the financial. I mean, most women are the people that make up the budgets in their house. They know where they're spending their money. They're the biggest spenders in terms of economics and all of the things that are important to a family and building community. That is a recipe for absolute success in any way you look at it. And I just not willing to back down from that and making sure that we're at the front of that. And we should be promoting each other and filling out like applications for all of the women we know to win every single award that's out there that's available for entrepreneurship for women who are rocking out in social and in engineering and manufacturing and lawyer, whatever it is. I'm actually on a committee right now that we're going to be giving out awards for women in construction and manufacturing and healthcare and all of the things. And we had to push to get people to nominate women who are in construction and truck driving. I'm like, girls, I know you're out there. Like, put in
Oh yeah.
applications for each other, self-nominate, do what you need to do. Let's show what these girls are doing. They're hardcore. They're awesome.
I love what you're saying here. I love the message because I'm a first generation immigrant, came to this country when I was 15 or 16, didn't know the language, came here on my own, right? And here I am.
Wow.
And so I can relate to, I could have a million excuses to be a victim, to hate, to be bitter. And on the contrary, one thing that I've noticed is it was my own drive. No one's ever tried to silence me. And so when I hear things like, women get less pay and the statistics, I think sometimes you can get lost and almost like you use the stats and the history to justify where you are and why you can't. Like you being a doer, a hyper doer, I've always sort of created my own path. If I couldn't go this way, the prescribed way, I found a new way, which
Yep.
is what I'm doing right now, is shaking the hell of a status quo in the legal world, and taking apart what's not working. Don't care about the personalities. I care about the pain points and solving. And I think as women, we have the ability to bring common sense and just get done. And so we need to support each other, but you can just get it. Just go out there and get it. That's
You
kind of my
can.
feeling. Yeah.
You can. And I think too that, sorry, I think I may have lost you, Denise. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Sorry, I think we got turned off there for a second. I'm not sure, but and I apologize if my devices are not 100% working here. I
Oh, don't
apologize. I'm
worry about
trying
it.
to
Don't worry about it.
recable here, but to your point, and congratulations on being such a rock star. Um, we have to. There is the part that I believe that is missing is that our as a women are not going to all agree on the same things. We're not going to I don't know why this is turning this way. We're not going to agree on everything, and we have to stop looking just because our gender is one way that we're all going to be the same, and that's not what this is about. We have to look at what we bring to the table and then be at the table. If there's a glass ceiling or a barrier, then break it down. Like the whole point of it is to break it,
Yes.
not to allow it to happen. And there's going to be some of us that pay the price along the way that are not, maybe we won't get the right pay or all of those things, and that should never happen ever. But at the same time, don't not do it. Like if we're victimized by that, if you stay in victimhood, we can't survive and thrive and make it better for that next generation. And that includes our brothers that have to be at that table fighting on our behalf. So we have to build alliances and strength and capacity amongst the people who know us, not just fight everybody. And this is one thing, I tell you this honestly, because I fought and fought and fought and fought, and I found myself at the end of that fight all by myself, but not with
Mm,
a single ally, not with people. Even though I was on the right side of history, even though I said the right things, I hadn't created enough allies. And that's nobody's fault. That's my fault. I have to take responsibility for not getting people on board and helping them understand why I was doing what I was doing, why I was saying what I was saying. It wasn't just because I wanted to be noisy or, annoying or in people's face or pushing the agenda. It wasn't about that, but it came across like that to people who didn't know me well enough. And I have to take responsibility for not having reached people in a way and resonating with them. Like I look at your podcast, I look how you're resonating with people. That took a long time for you to build and for you to put together, strong people that bring a story and have a narrative that is going to mean something, so that somebody else is inspired by your story, just like you and I have been incredibly inspired by so many other people's stories. And so that advocacy, if I could give one piece of unsolicited advice, would be that know your audience, know your crowd, know how it is that you're going to help to educate in that space. And you can be strong and loud and vocal and all those things, but if it doesn't resonate with people, your message will never be more than that. And over these last few years, humbly, I've taken a look back at my own career where I've made really significant strides, were also where I made huge errors in judgment and not bringing people on board. My assumption always was that, oh, I'm doing this for all the right reasons. Everybody's going to get why I'm doing it. And they
mm,
didn't. And they didn't understand. And I didn't understand why, because I was so caught up in my own moment of trying to advocate that I didn't listen to think that I hadn't gotten people there yet. Does that make sense?
100%. And I see even the messaging 5 years ago when my delivery was, how can you be doing this way? Well, no wonder when you get to this result, it's falling apart because you're focusing on the wrong thing. To I hear you. And
Yes.
it doesn't surprise me that you find yourself here because no one taught you. So let me walk, this journey with you and
Yeah.
show you how. And there's a big difference. And it I had to evolve and I grow through it. And I think it's a beautiful opportunity. So I love what you're saying is sometimes it's not about what you say. It's not about how much you know at all. It's about just how you make people feel. And no one likes to, no one likes to feel, no one wants to be felt, left behind or, or stupid and talked down to. And so it's being with as opposed to, against.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best advice ever. Yes. And that's something I think that we can talk about really, really well with other women, and also to bring our brothers along that with
Yes.
and
People.
yeah, because we've lost this nuance for having conversation. We're afraid of being called this, that, or the other, or being misinterpreted. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of things that people listen to only because it aligns with them. And I can't stress enough how important it is to listen to people you viscerally disagree with and find out what their pain points are. Not because you need to agree with them, but because if you're going to serve, you need to understand where they're coming from so that you can serve them appropriately, so that the work that you're doing is meaningful, and that you're not always going to agree with everybody, but that they understand that you get them, you get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
There's a genuine understanding that, okay, while I don't understand your perspective or your position, I would define my life by making sure you have the right to have that perspective and hash it out and try and figure things out and to educate ourselves more, especially in these Western democracies where we're so privileged. We have no excuse at all to
No.
not learn and to not find out and to not stretch ourselves beyond our own conscious biases and all of the things that we think that defines us. I mean, that plasticity that you put on I'm 54 and I started a new career last year in this space in the biosport. I don't know. I'm not a scientist and I'm not an AI person. And suddenly I'm an expert on all of these things having to talk. Well, the only reason that I can even give myself any credit on that is because I surrounded myself with people who are way smarter than me, who were generous with information, who felt that I had the right messaging arc to get their information out there. Right. And I didn't go into it knowing everything. I went into it going, okay, I'm asking a lot of questions. And if I understand it at a 30,000-foot level, I'm your end user. So I'm going to understand how to implement it. And life is like that. How are you implementing the information you have? How are you transferring that knowledge? How are you open to being criticized and changed? Like I was meeting with a fellow for a podcast today, and I'm not the right person for his podcast, but the one of the doctors who is at our office is, because they want the more technical side. Well, you don't want somebody like me doing diagnostics, okay? That's I can give you the background on what we do, but I'm not a doctor, so I hooked this guy up with our doctors so they can have a technical conversation. I'm not offended in the least. I can, Denisa, you and I are connectors. That's what we do. We
Oh
bring
yeah.
people together, right? That's our
Yeah.
talent. That's our gift. That's the job that the universe has given us. And the momentum that our tribe will create is so powerful right now if we're willing to jump in. And it's not a tsunami. It's a wave of building and construction and growth. It's not a destruction of what we have. It's taking what we have and making it better, and using the incredible privileges that we have in the countries that we live in, to, despite what might be going on in politics or other things, to look at what our growth opportunities are and focus on that.
It just feels natural what you're saying. It's just does not go against any sort of a flow. I'm just taking it all in and resonates really, really well because that's the only way that will, we all grow up basically bringing a different perspective depending on our
Yeah.
circumstances. So it's impossible to think that two people will see things exactly the same way. And accepting that is then the next important, that we do not take things personally. It simply is what it is.
Yep.
Unless of course somebody's trying to harm you, when you're trying to harm somebody, that's different. And then just being open, I, on a final note, I remember conversations at a dinner table with both of my kids. They were always about, oh, so and so said this, and they've learned to look at the other perspective. And or even if something extreme happened, there was a headline, we talked about, well, okay, so you believe, you may have seen differently, why do you think they did that? What was their upbringing like? Or what do you think that was lacking? And always trying to see the other side. And I think that's really important. You know what? We could talk forever, and I
I
will
know.
probably bring you back. And it's been terrific to have you.
Oh,
Real
my love,
pleasure.
I just love you so much. And it's such a pleasure. And like reading about you and what you were doing. And it was just, I was so honored that you were interested in my little world, in my bubble. But together we're very powerful. And we have to take this moment right now where critical changes are happening in the world, and they're our opportunity to take it and run with it and grow and use some of the pain and the things that are happening to look at it and say, okay, what is the silver lining here? What do we do to create growth amongst us, and to powerhouse these incredible people that are in our circles, to show them what they're capable of, and what the power of voting is, what mean in your leadership, like how do you get involved, grassroots level politics, make sure the people you're voting for are truly, truly looking at innovation and the changes that are happening in our country, and that they get that and they understand the progressive nature of the way things are going. These are all things we could talk for 100 years. And I
Yes.
feel like I'm just getting to know a teeny weeny bit about you. And I love your energy. And thank you. Thank you so much for the blessing of having me on your program. I'm truly
Oh,
honored.
oh, likewise. So thank you so much for your kind words, and a really true, true, true pleasure. I am still, I know I'll be feeling the aftermath of it. And to our listeners, thank you, of course, for joining us. And I'll be posting links in our show notes for those of you who want to follow and find out more about Leela and your next adventures. I'm sure we'll be hearing so much more about you. Be also sure to subscribe to our Beyond the Bar podcast channel and on social media. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.